Don't sleep yet. Please, don't sleep yet. Amara Johnson's small voice trembled against the wind as she knelt in the snow beside a little girl she had never met before that night, pressing her mittenless hands around the child's cold fingers and forcing herself not to cry. The lights of downtown Chicago shimmered far beyond the trees, gold and blue against the black winter sky, but out here near the edge of Grant Park, the city felt impossibly far away. Snow swept across the frozen grass in thin silver sheets. The street lamps flickered. Somewhere in the distance, a siren cried and faded, as if the whole world was moving on without them. The girl beside her wore a pale pink coat, the kind that looked soft enough to belong in a department store window. Her blonde curls spilled from beneath a white knit hat, and around her wrist hung a tiny silver bracelet with 2 letters engraved into the charm. LW Amara had found that bracelet 3 hours earlier on the polished floor outside the Grand Lakeshore Hotel, right after a man in a black overcoat looked down at her and decided she was not worth stopping for. His name was Nathaniel Whitaker. Everyone in Chicago knew that name. His face had been on magazine covers in grocery stores, on billboards above expressways, on charity banners hanging from buildings taller than any apartment Amara had ever lived in. He was the white billionaire who owned hospitals, hotels, software companies, and half the glass towers glowing along the river. That evening, he had stepped out of the Grand Lakeshore under a canopy of lights while cameras flashed and people in tuxedos called him generous, brilliant, a man with a heart for the city. Amara had been standing near the side entrance with her old backpack hugged to her chest, her braids tucked beneath a wool cap that had lost its pom-pom years ago. She was 8, small for her age, with deep brown skin, careful eyes, and the kind of quiet courage that came from learning early not to ask twice unless it mattered. And that night, it mattered. Her mother's phone had died. Their bus card had stopped working. The temperature had dropped below 20 degrees, and Amara only needed to call her. And in South Shore. One call. That was all. When Nathaniel passed, surrounded by security and warm breath rising from expensive coats, Amara stepped forward and said, "Sir, could I please use a phone? Just for 1 minute." He barely looked at her. His blue eyes flicked over her taped backpack, her worn sneakers, the snow dusting her shoulders. A security guard moved between them before she could say another word. "Not tonight, kid," the guard said. "Move along." Amara looked past him to Nathaniel. "Please, my mom is waiting. I just need help getting home." Nathaniel's jaw tightened, not with cruelty exactly, but with impatience, the kind that made people invisible before they even finished speaking. "Call city services," he said to the guard. Then to his driver, "Let's go." The black SUV door opened. Warm yellow lights spilled across the curb for half a second, touching Amara's shoes, then disappeared as the door shut. The vehicle pulled away, tires whispering over slush, leaving her in the blue cold with nothing but exhaust in the air and the sound of laughter from inside the hotel. She did not chase the car. She did not scream. She only stood there, swallowing the ache in her throat, because her grandmother used to say dignity was something no one could take unless you handed it over. Then, as she bent to pick up her backpack, she saw the bracelet near the curb, half hidden under a lace of snow. LW. The charm was shaped like a tiny lily. Amara wiped it with her sleeve and looked toward the hotel doors, but the guard had already turned his back. For a moment, she thought about leaving it there. People like them had people to find lost things. People like her were usually accused of taking them. But Amara slipped it carefully into the front pocket of her backpack anyway. Lost things, she believed, deserved to be returned. That belief was the reason she was still near the park when she saw the little girl in the pink coat hurry past the hotel's side garden, calling softly, "Snowy? Snowy, come back." A small white dog darted ahead through the iron gate toward the park, its leash dragging behind it like a ribbon. Amara glanced toward the entrance, expecting a nanny, a parent, somebody. No one came. The girl followed the dog across the sidewalk, under the rattling branches, straight into the dark. Amara's stomach tightened. She knew that look. A child walking with her heart instead of her sense. She ran after her, snow biting through the thin soles of her sneakers. "Hey," Amara called. "You shouldn't go that way." The girl turned once, startled, but the dog barked from deeper inside the park, and she kept going. By the time Amara reached the locked playground near the lakefront path, the wind had grown sharper. The dog was gone. The little girl was crouched near the fence, crying quietly, one glove missing, her voice fading into the storm. "My daddy's going to be mad," she whispered. Amara stopped a few feet away, breathing hard. Then she saw the girl's wrist, empty except for a pale mark where a bracelet had been. L.W. Lily Whitaker, Nathaniel Whitaker's daughter. For one breath, Amara stood frozen as the truth settled over her colder than the snow. The man who had left her outside had a child out here now, scared and alone. Amara could have run back to the hotel. She could have shouted for someone else. She could have remembered the way his window rolled past her without stopping. Instead, she took off her scarf, wrapped it gently around Lily's shoulders, and said, "My name is Amara. I found your bracelet. I'm going to get you home." Lily looked up at her through wet lashes. "Do you know my dad?" Amara's mouth tightened, but her voice stayed soft. "I saw him tonight." A gust of wind shook the fence. Lily shivered, and Amara moved closer, blocking the wind with her own small body. "Listen to me," she said, holding Lily's hands between hers. "You have to stay awake, okay? Tell me about Snowy. Tell me what color his collar is." "Blue," Lily whispered. "With stars." "Good. That's good. Keep talking." Amara pulled the silver bracelet from her backpack pocket and held it beneath the street lamp, turning the charm so it flashed whenever cars moved on the distant road. She had no working phone, no adult beside her, no warm coat big enough for 2 children, but she had her voice, her eyes, her courage, and a stubborn belief that nobody should be left behind in the cold. Far away, at the Grand Lakeshore Hotel, Nathaniel Whitaker was about to notice his daughter was missing. In minutes, security teams would flood the lobby, radios would crackle, elevators would open and close, and the man who thought money could summon anything would learn that the one person who had seen where Lily went was the same little black girl he had refused to see at all. The wind continued to sweep across the park in restless waves, carrying loose snow over the frozen ground like pale smoke. Amara tightened her grip around Lily's hands and forced a smile even though her own fingers felt numb. "What else can you tell me about Snowy?" she asked. Lily blinked slowly. "He likes peanut butter treats," she whispered. "And he sleeps on my bed even when he is not supposed to." "That sounds like a very spoiled dog," Amara said softly. A tiny smile appeared on Lily's face before another shiver ran through her shoulders. Amara immediately wrapped the scarf tighter around her. Every few seconds, she glanced toward the distant streetlights, hoping to see someone coming. Meanwhile, several blocks away, the atmosphere inside the Grand Lakeshore Hotel had changed completely. The elegant music in the ballroom still played, glasses still clinked, and guests still laughed, but none of it reached Nathaniel Whitaker anymore. He stood near a banquet table while a hotel manager spoke to him about an upcoming charity project. Then he noticed something strange. Lily's seat near the family table was empty. At first, he assumed she was with her nanny. He checked the nearby lounge. Nothing. He checked the private family suite upstairs. Nothing. 5 minutes later, concern replaced curiosity. 10 minutes later, concern became fear. "Where is my daughter?" he asked, his voice sharper than anyone had ever heard that evening. Staff members exchanged nervous looks. Security radios crackled to life. The nanny's face turned pale. No one had seen Lily leave. Nathaniel strode through the hotel corridors, opening doors, checking conference rooms, searching every place a 7-year-old might wander. The grand building suddenly felt enormous. Every hallway stretched longer than before. Every elevator seemed too slow. Then one security officer approached with hurried footsteps. "Sir, we reviewed a camera near the side garden." Nathaniel turned instantly. "Show me." Within seconds, he was standing in a surveillance room, staring at a screen. The footage showed Lily slipping through a side exit. Nathaniel's stomach dropped. She was following something small moving through the snow. Snowy. Then another figure appeared on the screen. A little black girl with a worn backpack. Nathaniel recognized her immediately. The child from outside the hotel. The one he had dismissed without a second thought. The footage showed her calling after Lily before running into the darkness behind her. "Who was that girl?" one officer asked. Nathaniel did not answer. He could still remember her voice asking for help. He could still remember turning away. Back in the park, Amara listened carefully. The storm seemed to be growing stronger. Snow gathered on her shoulders and along the fence beside them. Lily's eyelids kept drifting shut. "Nope," Amara said gently. "You promised to tell me more about Snowy." Lily opened her eyes again. He chewed one of my dad's shoes. That must have been an expensive mistake. Lily giggled weakly. The sound made Amara feel better than she expected. Did your dad get mad? She asked. Not really. He laughed. Lily paused. Well, eventually. Amara nodded. It was strange hearing stories about Nathaniel Whitaker as someone's father instead of someone's picture on a magazine cover. Lily looked up at her. Are you cold? Amara almost laughed. A little. You should have kept your scarf. You need it more. Lily stared at her for a moment. Why are you helping me? The question lingered in the icy air. Amara looked toward the city lights. She thought about the warm SUV disappearing into the night. She thought about how small she had felt standing alone outside the hotel. Then she looked back at Lily. Because being scared by yourself is the worst feeling in the world, she said quietly. Lily seemed to consider that. Then she nodded. I think you are brave. Amara felt her cheeks warm despite the cold. Before she could answer, a faint sound reached them through the wind. At first it was barely noticeable. Then it grew louder. Engines. Voices. Radio chatter. Flashlights flickered between the trees like moving stars. Amara stood quickly and waved both arms above her head. Over here, she shouted. We are over here. One beam of light turned toward them. Then another. A voice echoed through the darkness. I found them. Relief rushed through Amara, so suddenly her knees nearly gave out. More lights appeared. More footsteps. And among them, running faster than all the others despite the snow and ice beneath his shoes, was Nathaniel Whitaker. For the first time that night, the billionaire was not thinking about meetings, headlines, investments, or appearances. He was only a father searching for his child. And as he drew closer, the image illuminated by the rescue lights stopped him in his tracks. His daughter was safe because the little girl he had left behind had refused to leave someone else behind. Nathaniel Whitaker reached Lily in seconds and dropped to his knees in the snow. The moment his daughter threw her arms around him, a breath he did not know he had been holding finally escaped. Dad, Lily whispered, her voice trembling with relief. I am sorry. Nathaniel pulled her close. You have nothing to apologize for, he said quietly. Nothing. Around them, security officers lowered their flashlights. Rescue workers exchanged relieved glances. The storm still swirled through the park, but somehow the night felt different now. Then Nathaniel looked up. Standing a few feet away was Amara. Snow clung to her braids. Her sneakers were soaked. Her cheeks were pale from the cold. Yet she remained standing, watching to make sure Lily was safe before thinking about herself. For a long moment Nathaniel could not speak. He recognized her immediately. The little girl outside the hotel. The one he had ignored. The one who had asked for help. The one he had left standing alone in the cold. It was you, he finally said. Amara shifted uncomfortably. I found her near the playground, she answered softly. She was looking for her dog. Nathaniel stared at her. There were dozens of things he could have said. Thank you. I am sorry. I was wrong. Yet none of them seemed large enough. Lily suddenly looked between them. Dad, she said. Amara stayed with me the whole time. She gave me her scarf. Nathaniel noticed the familiar scarf wrapped around Lily's shoulders. A simple scarf. Worn. Faded. Probably one of the few warm things Amara owned. And she had given it away without hesitation. The realization settled heavily inside him. One of the rescue workers approached carrying a thermal blanket. We should get both girls someplace warm, she said. Nathaniel immediately nodded. Absolutely. The blanket was placed around Amara's shoulders. She seemed surprised by the gesture. As the group began walking toward the waiting vehicles, Lily reached for Amara's hand. Come with us, she said. Amara hesitated. I should find my mom. Do you know where she is? Nathaniel asked gently. Amara lowered her eyes. Not exactly. Nathaniel felt a painful twist in his chest. Earlier that evening, he had not cared enough to listen. Now every answer seemed important. What happened? He asked. Amara explained quietly. The dead phone. The bus card that stopped working. The plan to call her aunt. The hotel entrance. The request for help. Each word felt like another weight added to Nathaniel's conscience. He remembered the moment clearly now. He remembered how easily he had dismissed her. How quickly he had moved on. Amara never accused him. She never sounded angry. Somehow that made it worse. They reached the line of waiting SUVs. Reporters had not yet learned about the situation, but hotel staff and security personnel stood nearby. Several of them recognized Amara. A few exchanged uncomfortable looks after realizing exactly who had rescued Lily. Nathaniel opened the rear passenger door himself. Get inside, he told both girls. Warm air rushed from the vehicle. Lily climbed in first. Amara remained frozen beside the door. It is okay, Nathaniel said. You are safe. Slowly she nodded and climbed inside. During the drive back to the hotel, silence filled the cabin. Snow tapped softly against the windows. The city lights passed by in streaks of gold and white. Lily eventually fell asleep against her father's shoulder. Nathaniel carefully adjusted the blanket around her before turning toward Amara. She sat quietly holding her backpack on her lap. What is in there? He asked. Amara unzipped the front pocket and pulled out the silver bracelet. The charm caught the passing streetlights. I found it near the hotel, she said. Nathaniel stared at it. Lily's bracelet. The item security teams had already begun searching for. You kept it safe, he said. I wanted to return it. Nathaniel accepted the bracelet carefully. For some reason, the small piece of silver seemed more valuable than anything he owned. It represented a choice Amara had made when nobody was watching. She could have walked away. She could have ignored Lily. She could have decided that people who ignored others deserved the same treatment. Instead, she had chosen kindness. The vehicle rolled beneath the glowing entrance of the Grand Lakeshore Hotel. Staff members rushed forward as soon as the doors opened. Relief spread through the crowd when they saw Lily unharmed. Nathaniel stepped out and then turned back toward Amara. She looked exhausted now. The adrenaline that had carried her through the night was fading. Her eyelids drooped. Her shoulders sagged beneath the blanket. Nathaniel looked at the child for several seconds before speaking. Tonight, he said quietly, you did something extraordinary. Amara looked down. I just helped. Nathaniel felt his throat tighten. That answer somehow carried more wisdom than many speeches he had heard from powerful people. As hotel staff surrounded Lily and security officers began discussing reports, Nathaniel made a decision. He was not going to let Amara disappear into the night. Not again. The lobby of the Grand Lakeshore Hotel felt strangely quiet despite the dozens of people moving through it. Staff members hurried from one side of the marble floor to the other. Security officers spoke softly into radios. Guests whispered as fragments of the evening's events spread from table to table. Yet Nathaniel Whitaker barely noticed any of it. His attention remained fixed on one exhausted little girl, sitting in a leather chair near the fireplace. A hotel employee had brought Amara a cup of hot chocolate nearly 10 minutes earlier. It still sat untouched in her hands. She looked as though she was afraid to spill even a single drop. Across the room, Lily had been reunited with her nanny and was now wrapped in blankets while a doctor performed a routine examination. Every few seconds, Lily glanced toward Amara. Each time she did, she smiled. Nathaniel noticed. The sight tightened something inside him. He walked toward Amara slowly. For years, people had crossed rooms to speak with him. Investors, politicians, reporters, executives. Yet somehow this short walk felt more difficult than any boardroom negotiation he had ever faced. When he reached her chair, Amara immediately sat up straighter. Sir, she said politely. Nathaniel winced almost imperceptibly. The title felt undeserved tonight. How are you feeling? He asked. I am okay. Are you warm enough? Amara nodded. Yes, sir. Again that word. Again that uncomfortable feeling. Nathaniel glanced at the cup in her hands. The hot chocolate is getting cold. A faint smile appeared on her face. I was saving it. For what? I do not know. For the first time all evening, Nathaniel almost laughed. Not because the answer was funny, but because it was honest. The kind of honest answer adults forgot how to give. Nearby, the fireplace crackled softly. Golden light danced across the room. Outside, snow continued falling beyond the enormous glass windows. Nathaniel sat down in the chair across from her. Hotel executives standing nearby immediately looked surprised. Billionaires did not usually spend their evenings sitting quietly in hotel lobbies talking with children. Nathaniel no longer cared what they expected. Amara, he said carefully, earlier tonight you asked me for help. She looked down at her cup. Yes. And I did not listen. Amara remained silent. Nathaniel took a slow breath. I should have. The words felt simple. Too simple. Yet they carried more weight than any speech he had given at a charity gala. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, Amara looked up. Most people do not. Nathaniel frowned slightly. What do you mean? Sometimes adults are busy. She shrugged. Sometimes they think kids will figure things out. Her voice contained no bitterness. That somehow made the statement even harder to hear. Nathaniel thought about the countless meetings on his calendar, the endless schedules, the constant pressure. Then he remembered a frightened little girl standing outside a hotel entrance, asking for 1 minute of help. 1 minute. That was all she needed. Across the lobby, Lily suddenly slipped away from her nanny and hurried toward them. "There you are," she announced. She climbed onto the chair beside Amara without hesitation. "The doctor said I am fine." "That is good," Amara replied with obvious relief. Lily grinned. "And Snowy is safe too." At that moment, a hotel employee entered carrying the small white dog. Snowy immediately wiggled free and raced toward Lily, earning laughter from several people nearby. Even Amara laughed. Nathaniel watched the two girls together, one wearing designer clothes, the other carrying a backpack patched with tape. Two completely different worlds connected by a single act of kindness. Lily suddenly looked at her father. "Can Amara stay until her family gets here?" Nathaniel answered without hesitation. "Of course." Then he turned toward one of his assistants. "Has anyone reached her aunt yet?" "We are still trying, sir." Nathaniel nodded. "Keep trying." The assistant hurried away. Hours earlier, he would have delegated the situation and moved on. Now he found himself personally waiting for updates. Something had shifted. Perhaps it had started in the park. Perhaps it had started when he saw Lily wrapped in Amara's scarf. Whatever the reason, the old certainty that money solved every problem no longer felt as solid. A few minutes later, one of the security officers approached. "Sir, we found contact information." Relief flashed across Amara's face. Nathaniel immediately stood. "Call her." The officer nodded and stepped aside to make the call. Amara looked down, twisting one strap of her backpack nervously. Nathaniel noticed. "Everything is going to be all right," he said. She studied him for a moment. Earlier that night, she would not have believed those words coming from him. Truthfully, Nathaniel was not sure he would have believed them himself. But for the first time in a long time, he intended to make certain they were true. The call connected 3 minutes later. Amara sat frozen in her chair as the security officer spoke softly into the phone. Nathaniel watched every expression cross her face. Hope, worry, relief, then uncertainty. Finally, the officer lowered the phone and approached. "We reached her aunt," he said. "She has been looking for Amara for hours." Amara released a breath that sounded almost like a sob, though she quickly swallowed it. "Is she mad?" she asked quietly. The officer smiled. "She sounds worried, not angry." Nathaniel saw Amara's shoulders relax for the first time all night. Lily immediately clapped her hands. "See? I told you everything would work out." Amara smiled back. "You did." The clock above the concierge desk showed nearly 11:30. Most children their age would have been asleep hours ago. Yet neither girl seemed eager to separate. Snowy lay curled at Lily's feet, while the fireplace cast warm light across the lobby. For a brief moment, the chaos of the evening felt far away. Nathaniel's assistant returned carrying a tablet. "Sir, her aunt is about 25 minutes away." Nathaniel nodded. "Good." Then he paused. "Has anyone contacted Amara's mother?" The assistant hesitated. "We are still trying to confirm her location." Amara lowered her eyes. Nathaniel noticed immediately. "What is it?" he asked gently. She hesitated before answering. "Mom works 2 jobs. Sometimes her phone dies. Sometimes she worries when she cannot find me." Nathaniel felt another wave of guilt. He imagined a mother searching the city for her daughter while he had been attending a gala celebrating community responsibility. The irony was impossible to ignore. Across the room, several guests quietly approached Lily to check on her. She answered politely, but kept glancing back toward Amara. Finally, one elderly woman stopped beside Nathaniel. "Is this the young lady who found your daughter?" she asked. Nathaniel looked at Amara. "Yes," he answered. The woman smiled warmly. "Then she is a hero." Amara immediately shook her head. "No, ma'am. I just helped." The woman looked surprised. Nathaniel was not. He had already noticed something unusual about Amara. She never exaggerated herself. She never asked for praise. She never acted as though kindness deserved applause. She simply did what she believed was right. More guests began hearing the story. Within minutes, whispers spread throughout the lobby. Several people approached to thank Amara personally. Each compliment made her more uncomfortable. Finally, Lily leaned closer and whispered, "You are blushing." "I am not." "You are." "Maybe a little." Lily giggled. Nathaniel found himself smiling despite everything. Then his phone vibrated. The screen displayed a name he normally would have answered immediately. One of the largest investors in his company. Tonight, he silenced the call without reading the message. His assistant looked shocked. Nathaniel barely noticed. For years, his schedule had controlled every hour of his life. Tonight, something else felt more important. A few minutes later, hotel staff brought fresh sandwiches and warm soup. Amara stared at the tray uncertainly. "Go ahead," Nathaniel said. "You must be hungry." She looked at him carefully. Really? Really? Lily had already grabbed a spoon. Within moments, both girls were eating together while Snowy watched hopefully from beneath the table. Nathaniel sat nearby observing the scene. The contrast struck him again. Earlier that evening, one child had entered the hotel through private elevators and reserved suites. The other had stood outside asking for a phone call. Yet when it mattered most, neither wealth nor status had determined character. Courage had. Compassion had. The realization stayed with him. At last the revolving front door turned and a woman hurried into the lobby. Her winter coat was dusted with snow. Exhaustion lined her face. The moment Amara saw her, she jumped from her chair. "Aunt Denise." The woman crossed the marble floor almost at a run and wrapped Amara in a tight embrace. "Thank goodness," she whispered. "Thank goodness you are all right." Amara hugged her back fiercely. Nathaniel looked away for a moment, suddenly feeling like he was witnessing something deeply personal. When Aunt Denise finally released her, tears glistened in her eyes. "Do not ever scare me like that again. I am sorry. We will discuss that later." Then Denise noticed Nathaniel standing nearby. Recognition flashed across her face. "Mr. Whitaker." Nathaniel nodded. "Your niece helped save my daughter tonight." Denise looked at Amara, then back at Nathaniel. "That sounds exactly like her." The answer surprised him. "It does." Denise smiled softly. "Amara has been helping people her entire life. She just never expects anything in return." Nathaniel looked at the little girl standing beside her aunt. For the second time that night, he felt ashamed of how quickly he had judged her. The storm outside continued falling over Chicago, covering streets and rooftops in white. But inside the warm glow of the hotel lobby, Nathaniel realized this night was changing more than one life. It was changing him. The following morning, Chicago woke beneath a blanket of fresh snow. Sunlight reflected off rooftops and frozen sidewalks, turning the city into a landscape of silver and gold. Nathaniel Whitaker stood alone in the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse office, looking down at the streets nearly 50 stories below. Normally, his mornings began with market reports, conference calls, and schedules planned down to the minute. Today, none of those things held his attention. On his desk sat a small silver bracelet with the initials LW engraved on the charm. Lily had already put it back on before school, but Nathaniel found himself thinking about it anyway. More accurately, he found himself thinking about the girl who had returned it. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. His assistant entered carrying a folder. "Good morning, sir." Nathaniel turned. "Did you find the information I requested?" "Yes." The assistant handed him the folder. Inside were only a few pages. Basic information about Amara Johnson and her family. Nathaniel had expected something complicated. Instead, he found ordinary struggles. Her mother, Carla Johnson, worked long hours between two jobs. Her Aunt Denise often helped with childcare. Amara attended a public elementary school on the south side. Her attendance record was nearly perfect. Her teachers consistently described her using the same words: kind, responsible, thoughtful. Nathaniel slowly closed the folder. Those words sounded exactly right. Later that afternoon, he found himself driving across the city without an entourage, without reporters, and without any public announcement. Snow lined the streets in neat piles. Small neighborhood stores sat beside brick apartment buildings. Children bundled in winter coats hurried home from school. It was a part of Chicago Nathaniel rarely visited despite spending years claiming to care about every corner of the city. His driver eventually stopped in front of a modest apartment building. Nathaniel stepped out holding a large paper bag from a bakery. He stared at the entrance for a moment, suddenly unsure of himself. Billion-dollar negotiations had never made him nervous. Ringing this doorbell did. Denise answered after the second knock. Surprise flashed across her face immediately. "Mr. Whitaker?" "Good afternoon." He lifted the bakery bag awkwardly. "I hope this is not a bad time." Denise blinked once before stepping aside. "Please come in." The apartment was small but warm. The scent of cinnamon and coffee drifted through the air. Family photographs covered one wall. Children's drawings covered another. Nothing matched perfectly, yet everything felt lived in and loved. Nathaniel noticed that immediately. Then he heard laughter from another room. Amara appeared carrying a stack of library books nearly as large as her arms. She stopped so suddenly that one book nearly slipped from the pile. "Mr. Whitaker?" Nathaniel smiled. "Hello, Amara." Her eyes widened. "What are you doing here?" The question was so direct that Denise laughed softly. Nathaniel found himself smiling again. "That is a fair question." Amara carefully set the books on a table. "Is Lily okay?" "She is doing very well." Relief instantly crossed Amara's face. "Good." Nathaniel held out the bakery bag. "I brought pastries." Amara glanced at Denise, who nodded. "Thank you," Amara said politely. They sat together around a small kitchen table. For the next half hour, Nathaniel listened far more than he spoke. He learned that Amara loved reading mystery novels. He learned that she spent weekends helping her younger cousins with homework. He learned that her favorite subject was science because she wanted to understand how things worked. The more he listened, the more uncomfortable one memory became. The image of himself walking past her outside the hotel. Eventually, Amara asked a question. "Why did you come?" The room grew quiet. Nathaniel considered pretending he had another reason. A business reason. A charitable reason. But Amara deserved honesty. "Because I realized I almost made a terrible mistake," he said. "What kind of mistake?" He looked directly at her. "I saw your backpack before I saw you. I saw your clothes before I listened to your words. I made assumptions." Amara studied him carefully. "People do that sometimes." Nathaniel nodded slowly. "They should not." Sunlight streamed through the apartment window, illuminating the kitchen table. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Amara reached for one of the pastries and broke it in half. Without hesitation, she offered the larger piece to Nathaniel. "My grandma says everybody deserves a second chance," she said. Nathaniel accepted the pastry quietly. In that simple gesture, he recognized something extraordinary. The little girl he had failed to help was now offering him forgiveness he had not earned. And for the first time in many years, Nathaniel Whitaker felt truly determined to become the kind of person worthy of receiving it. Over the next several weeks, something unexpected began to happen. What started as a single visit turned into several. Nathaniel found reasons to stop by the Johnson family apartment whenever his schedule allowed. Sometimes he brought books for Amara. Sometimes he brought science kits that Lily insisted they build together. Other times he arrived with nothing at all except a few free hours, something that had once been rarer than any gift money could buy. On a bright Saturday afternoon, Amara and Lily sat cross-legged on the floor of the apartment living room assembling a small model. Bridge from one of the science kits. Snowy watch from a nearby blanket, occasionally attempting to steal pieces and earning laughter from both girls. Nathaniel sat at the kitchen table helping Denise carry groceries inside, while Carla Johnson prepared lunch after returning from work. The apartment felt alive. Warm. Comfortable. It was a feeling Nathaniel had not realized he missed. Years of penthouses, private lounges, and executive meetings had filled his life with luxury, but very little of this kind of simple joy. "Your bridge is crooked," Lily announced. "It is not crooked," Amara replied. "It is creatively engineered." "That means crooked." "No, it means advanced." The girls dissolved into laughter again. Nathaniel smiled as he watched them. Then his phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen and saw dozens of unread messages. News articles. Social media notifications. Interview requests. Earlier that week, details of the rescue had quietly reached local reporters. At first, only a few small stories appeared. Then the story spread. A little black girl had helped rescue the daughter of one of the most recognizable businessmen in America. People were fascinated. Most headlines focused on Amara's courage. Others focused on Nathaniel's public acknowledgement that he had initially ignored her request for help. To his surprise, that part of the story generated the strongest reaction. Many praised him for admitting his mistake. Others criticized him for making it in the first place. Nathaniel accepted both responses. They were fair. What mattered more was that people were paying attention to a larger issue. The reality that many children were overlooked every day simply because adults assumed someone else would help them. That evening, Nathaniel attended a meeting at one of his company's headquarters. The boardroom overlooked the Chicago skyline. Glass walls reflected the city lights as executives reviewed quarterly projections. Yet halfway through the presentation, Nathaniel interrupted. I want to discuss a new initiative. Several executives exchanged curious looks. Nathaniel stood and walked toward the window. A few weeks ago, my daughter was helped by someone extraordinary. A child who had every reason to walk away but chose kindness instead. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the story. That experience exposed something I should have seen long ago, Nathaniel continued. There are children in this city facing obstacles no child should face alone. One executive nodded politely. What exactly are you proposing? Nathaniel turned back toward the table. Emergency family resource centers. Safe places open year-round where children and families can access communication services, transportation assistance, meals, and support without barriers. The room became very quiet. The proposal would require substantial funding. Nathaniel already knew that. You want to launch this company-wide? Another executive asked. Immediately, questions followed. Budgets, logistics, timelines. Nathaniel answered each one calmly. Yet throughout the entire discussion, one image remained in his mind. A little girl standing outside a hotel asking for a single phone call. Hours later, he returned home. Lily was waiting in the living room wearing pajamas and holding a drawing. Dad, look. Nathaniel accepted the paper. It showed 3 children standing beneath falling snow. One had blonde curls. One had dark braids. The third was a white dog with an oversized smile. Above them, Lily had written 3 words in colorful marker. Friends find friends. Nathaniel stared at the drawing longer than necessary. This is beautiful, he said softly. Lily grinned. Amara helped me with the letters. Nathaniel placed the drawing carefully on a nearby table. Then both of you did a great job. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed and the city lights shimmered beyond the windows, Nathaniel stood alone looking at the drawing again. It seemed like such a simple picture. Yet somehow it represented everything he was learning. Wealth could build buildings. Influence could open doors. Success could create opportunities. But compassion was different. Compassion changed people. A child had taught him that lesson in the middle of a snowstorm, and now the effects of that lesson were beginning to spread far beyond the 2 lives that first crossed paths on a cold winter night. Spring arrived slowly in Chicago. The snow disappeared from sidewalks, trees filled with fresh green leaves, and the city seemed to breathe a little easier. For Amara, life remained busy. School projects, library visits, helping her cousins, and spending time with Lily filled most of her days. Yet one afternoon brought an unexpected surprise. Her elementary school principal entered the classroom carrying a folder and a smile. Amara Johnson, she announced. Would you come with me for a moment? Curious eyes followed Amara into the hallway. She worried she had forgotten an assignment or broken some rule without realizing it. Instead, she found Nathaniel Whitaker waiting near the front office alongside Lily and her mother, Carla. Nathaniel looked unusually nervous. Did something happen? Amara asked immediately. Lily laughed. No, something good happened. The principal handed Amara a letter. Confused, she opened it carefully. Her eyes moved across the page once, then twice, then a third time. I do not understand, she whispered. Carla stepped closer. What does it say? Amara looked up. It says I got accepted. Her voice cracked slightly. Accepted where? Lily bounced excitedly. Keep reading. Amara lowered her eyes again. It was an invitation to a prestigious science enrichment program for gifted students from across the state. Hundreds applied each year. Only a small number were selected. Her teachers had nominated her months earlier without telling her. Nathaniel smiled. Your application impressed them. Amara stared at the letter. They picked me. They did. The principal confirmed proudly. For a moment, Amara seemed unable to speak. Then she looked at her mother. Carla immediately wrapped her in a hug. Tears filled her eyes. I knew it, she whispered. I always knew you could do anything. The weeks that followed brought even more changes. Construction began on the first community resource center funded through Nathaniel's new initiative. Unlike many projects announced with speeches and forgotten later, this one moved quickly. Nathaniel personally reviewed plans, visited locations, and met with families. One Saturday morning he invited Amara and Lily to see the first building before it officially opened. The center stood in a neighborhood that had long needed additional support services. Bright murals decorated the walls. Comfortable reading areas filled one room. Computers lined another. Families would be able to access transportation assistance, communication services, tutoring programs, meals, and emergency support all in one place. As they walked through the nearly completed building, Amara stopped in front of a small plaque mounted near the entrance. She read the inscription silently. Then her eyes widened. "Mr. Whitaker." Nathaniel turned. "Yes. Why is my name here?" The plaque read, "Inspired by the courage and kindness of Amara Johnson, who reminded us that every child deserves to be seen." Amara looked completely stunned. "I did not know about this," she said. "I know," Nathaniel replied softly. "That was intentional." Amara stared at the plaque for several seconds. "But I did not build any of this." Nathaniel smiled gently. "No, you built something much harder." She looked confused. "What?" Nathaniel glanced around the building. "Families would soon find help here. Children would find support here. Parents would find hope here. You changed the way I see people," he said quietly. The words settled over the room. Lily slipped her hand into Amara's. Neither girl spoke. They did not need to. Outside, sunlight poured through the windows. Workers continued preparing the center for opening day. Life moved forward. Yet Nathaniel knew none of this would have happened without a little girl who chose kindness during the worst night of her own. As they prepared to leave, Amara looked one last time at the plaque. Then she shook her head with a small smile. "My grandma always says one person cannot change the whole world." Nathaniel opened the front door and sunlight flooded the entrance. "Maybe not the whole world," he said, "but they can change someone else's world. And sometimes that is where everything starts." 1 year later, the city gathered beneath a clear autumn sky for the official opening of the 5th Community Resource Center. Colorful banners stretched across the entrance. Families filled the sidewalks. Children ran between tables covered with books, school supplies, and science exhibits. Reporters stood near the stage, but the atmosphere felt less like a media event and more like a neighborhood celebration. Nathaniel Whitaker stood near the podium watching people arrive. The center behind him was larger than the first one, but what mattered most was not the building. It was the families already using the programs. It was the students finding tutors. It was the parents finding support. It was the children finding someone willing to listen. A movement that had begun with one small act of kindness had grown beyond anything he imagined. Near the front row sat Carla, Denise, Lily, and Amara. At 9 years old, Amara looked taller now. Her backpack was new, but she still carried it the same way. Her curiosity remained unchanged. So did her habit of helping everyone around her before thinking about herself. Earlier that morning, she had spent 20 minutes helping a younger child build a model rocket at one of the science booths. Lily had rolled her eyes and said, "You make friends everywhere." Amara had laughed. Maybe because everybody needs one. Now the crowd settled into their seats. Nathaniel stepped to the microphone. The applause lasted several seconds before finally fading. He looked across the audience and took a slow breath. There had been a time when speeches came easily to him. Quarterly earnings, expansion plans, corporate announcements. Those words required confidence. This required honesty. "A year ago," he began, "I believed success meant solving problems quickly and efficiently. I believed if you worked hard enough, planned carefully enough, and earned enough influence, you could control the outcome of almost anything." The audience listened quietly. Then one winter night, I learned how wrong I was. Nathaniel's eyes found Amara in the crowd. "I met someone who taught me a lesson I should have learned much earlier. A lesson about seeing people, really seeing them." Amara immediately looked down, embarrassed by the attention. Lily grinned beside her. Nathaniel continued, "Sometimes the most important person in your life is someone you almost walk past. Someone whose voice is easy to miss if you are too busy listening to your own." The crowd remained silent. Not uncomfortable silence. Thoughtful silence. The kind that settles over people when they recognize truth. "This center exists because of compassion," Nathaniel said. "Not mine. It began with the compassion of a child who chose kindness when she had every reason not to." Applause filled the air. Amara's face turned bright red. Denise laughed softly while Carla wiped away a tear. After the ceremony ended, families toured the building. Children explored classrooms. Volunteers answered questions. Laughter echoed through the halls. Near one of the science labs, Nathaniel found Amara standing beside a display of student inventions. "You survived the speech," he said. Amara groaned. "Barely." Nathaniel laughed. "You still do not like attention." "Not really. That has not changed." Amara looked around the center. "A lot of things changed, though. Nathaniel followed her gaze. She was right. A lot had changed. Yet the most important change could not be measured in square feet, budgets, or headlines. It lived inside people. Do you remember what you told me the first time I visited your apartment? He asked. Amara thought for a moment. Then her eyes widened. About second chances? Nathaniel nodded. You were right. For a few seconds, they stood quietly watching families move through the building. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Children carried books beneath colorful murals. Volunteers greeted parents at information desks. Hope seemed present in every corner. Finally, Lily ran over holding Snowy's leash. Come on, she called. We are taking a picture. Amara laughed. Do we have to? Yes, Lily declared. Definitely. The girls hurried toward the front entrance while Snowy trotted happily between them. Nathaniel followed at a slower pace. As cameras flashed and families gathered together, he looked at the scene before him and thought back to a cold night when two paths crossed by chance. One child needed help. Another child needed saving. In the end, both had changed a life. And perhaps that was the real miracle. Not that one little girl rescued someone in need, but that her kindness continued traveling outward, touching person after person, creating warmth wherever it went, proving that the smallest act of compassion can become the beginning of something far greater than anyone ever imagined.